A Celtic State of Mind has been named as one of 7 finalists in the Best International Podcast category at this year's Football Content Awards. We won the Best Football Podcast Award in 2018, and it is a real achievement to be finalists once again. Thank you all for your ongoing support over the last 3 years. If you have been enjoying our daily content, then feel free to vote for A Celtic State of Mind at footballcontentawards.com. I have added the link to the bio of this episode, and the instructions and further links are also on axom.net. You can also vote on Twitter by simply tweeting "I am voting for" at AxomPod in @_FCAs for hashtag Best Podcast. Thank you again for all your support. Welcome to A Celtic State of Mind. I'm John Dykes, and once again I'm joined by Paul Lamb for the Matchworn Celtic Jersey podcast. Welcome back, Paul.
Hi Paul, good to be back, mate.
It's always a pleasure. We've got another 4 jerseys to work our way through. 2 homes, 2 aways. First one up was introduced in 1982. Tell us about it, Paul.
The first one here is the 1982 and 1984 home strip. Slight variation on the hoops on this one, with the green hoops having a pinstripe either side of it. Mm-hmm. But still with the classic spacing. Again, it was the white V-neck collar with a green band in the middle of it as well, and that classic embroidered badge and the Umbro logo on it as well.
I love the fact that they still had cuffs. You know, the actual short sleeve had the cuffs quite tight of its time, really. And really the big change in this jersey was the V-neck had previously been pure white, and now it had introduced the one green band, and it looked like a completely different jersey with that one minor change. That particular jersey itself, it was one that was worn fairly regularly in Europe against such teams as Ajax and Real Sociedad in 1982, Sporting Lisbon and Nottingham Forest in 1983, and even Ghent in 1984. We were wearing this home jersey just prior to the introduction of the sponsorship coming onto the jersey as well, Paul. It's incredible how that one green band just completely changes the look.
The pinstripes either side of the green hoop as well just changes the look of it from the previous season's shirt just being the plain green and white. You know, it's just a minor detail, but again, it makes it look like a completely different shirt.
And those pinstripes, they remained right up until 1987 in the jerseys after this one as well, and then they were reintroduced much later on by New Balance as well to give us that 80s look. And I think you're right, because they are quite subtle, Paul, it still works with the hoops. I think the later versions, I'm talking the more modern ones, didn't work as well because they were too bold. But when you look at this from afar, it just looks like the green and white hoops, and of course it was complemented with the usual white shorts, white socks. I mean, at that time the club and Umbro certainly weren't cashing in on sales of shorts and socks, because there was very little changing in that respect. So as I was saying, it was worn in some famous European games of that period, Paul. One such match was obviously the Ajax encounter, and I always find it funny that when Ajax were shown, after arriving in Glasgow, they were shown their training facilities at Barrowfield, the Barrowfield training ground, and they failed to believe that was actually Celtic's training facilities. They were convinced that Celtic were up to the high jinks due to the state of the training complex, and they totally failed to believe that a club, you know, less than 20 years previously that had won the European Cup actually trained on that particular pitch. And this was a team, of course, that had Johan Cruyff, Jan Molby, Jesper Olsen, and Marco van Basten was on the bench, and Frank Rijkaard was an unused squad man at that time. So it was the beginnings of a particularly good side for Ajax, and Celtic obviously were able to defeat them as well. Now, this jersey then, Paul, again, you're going to have the difficulties unless it was a European jersey. Was there any numbering on the back of your one?
No, this is just a plain version this one.
And what's your research thrown up in relation to the wearer or the match?
Unfortunately, I don't know who wore it. I do know the game it was worn in. This shirt came from a former Manchester United player's own collection. This shirt was swapped with a Celtic player at the end of Lou Macari's testimonial, but unfortunately the player can't remember who he swapped with, so that's where the trail ends.
Interesting. And again, the same jersey was worn in the League Cup finals of 1982-84, and it's something that we might revisit at a later date because there was a few changes, bizarrely enough, for those League Cup finals. And these are the real anorak changes, such as the badge being on a white hoop instead of a green hoop, things like that. We'll come back to that hopefully in a future podcast. So you were able to identify when it was worn, just unfortunately not by whom. But again, these things, there might be an image. Often with these friendly games and testimonial games, there's plenty of images of players swapping jerseys afterwards. Something might come up, Paul, if you see the Man U player swapping or shaking hands with a particular player.
You never know. So far, I've found images from the game, just action shots, but nothing post-match.
The big thing again, and it would benefit match-worn jersey collectors as well as people who write about the history of Celtic Football Club. It really is. Photographic archives are so important, Paul. So important as part of the research. And it's unfortunate because when you're looking, for example, through the brilliant archive they've got up at the Mitchell Library, and you see a picture in a newspaper, they may have only printed one picture. Or if it was a big European game in the 80s, there was probably quite a few pictures on the back few pages. But the photographer or photographers would have taken dozens and dozens of pictures during that 90-minute game. And invariably, those pictures are still with the photographer or their family if they've been passed down. So there are collections out there and archives that are probably sitting in dusty boxes and lofts, having never been digitised. And guys like you and me think that kind of stuff's gold dust because it would assist with research, And I'm aware of a couple of really excellent collections out there, and I have had access to one for my first book, and it was just incredible to see unseen images of Celtic's golden period in the 60s and the 70s, Paul. And again, it just gets the juices flowing, but I think there will be other images out there. Let's hold that thought, and hopefully you'll get more information in the future. Never say never in this game, Paul. And that's the same with jerseys as well. You might think you'll never see one, and then all of a sudden it pops up. So that's the 1980s. We're going to fast forward to the 1990s now, and will we go for the away jersey? Now, I've got some good memories of this actually, because at the time that Celtic and Umbro launched an away jersey in 1994, the Celtic View ran a competition, Paul, and asked its readers to design an away kit. And I don't know if you remember this competition. It wasn't the first time they'd done that. They'd also done it back in the 1970s with a jersey that is very, very hard to find, which is the black and green vertical striped jersey. On this occasion, it wasn't a case of Umbro replicating the best design. The competition was try and get as close to what the design is going to be as possible. Most of the designs at the time, I guess what you would call them now is concept kits, but this was proper felt tip pen efforts, Paul, right? Were white, black and green, which had become quite a popular design choice for Celtic away jerseys. And of course, Umbro and Celtic went ahead and released this effort. Now, first of all, describe it to us and tell me what your thoughts were at the time when this was launched.
Where to start with this one? It's a predominantly black shirt with the white C.R. Smith sponsor across the middle, and the upper half is divided with white vertical stripes with a black diamond pinstripe running through it, and it's got green panels at either sides where the sleeves join. Standard black collar with a white and green band round. I remember seeing it, and of course the shorts and socks as well continue with that theme, Paul. The hatch, white and black and all that kind of stuff. You can see that in the shorts. Classy Umbro socks actually with the diamonds around about them. But this was a strip that the template was used for various other clubs. I remember the Chelsea away kit. So at the time, I felt quite aggrieved. I wasn't a big fan when this was launched, right? But at least it was a decent colour scheme. You look at the Chelsea one, it was orange and grey, so you remember people like Ruud Gullit wearing this monstrosity of an away strip. Nottingham Forest had the home kit. I think they got away with that, black and red with some white. And then the controversial one that I remember is the Man United, and it was like two-tone grey. It was a strip that they wore against Celtic actually in the Paul McStay testimonial, this horrific grey effort, which was blamed by Alex Ferguson for Manchester United's capitulation against Southampton back in 1996, because he believed that the players couldn't actually pinpoint where their teammates were because they had a grey kit on. That's some excuse for getting beaten 6-3 at the Dell. They actually, if I remember right, they changed strips at half-time in that game. they changed into the blue and white because they were doing so bad in the first half wearing that grey strip.
They did, and I'm pretty sure this wasn't a clash of kits. This was Fergie thinking that his players were trying to pass to a pillar on the side of the pitch rather than their own teammates. But there's a lot to like about the Celtic one now. It's one of these jerseys, Paul, I've mentioned before. In time, I've grown to like this jersey. I like the frame around the crest. I like that, how it's got the badge, a proper badge round about it. And with a couple of tweaks, it could have been even more a classic jersey. I remember it was worn in the Mike Galloway benefit game, wasn't it?
Yeah, this was a Celtic select team wore this, the benefit game.
So you've got images of the likes of Kenny Dalglish wearing this jersey in that particular match. I can see that this has got the league patches on the sleeves, Paul. Were you able to identify the wearer or the match it was worn in?
This one was a good bit of research went into this. With it having the SFL sleeve patches on it, it's from the 95-96 season, the first year we wore these patches on the sleeves. In that season, we only actually wore this strip twice, and both games were away at Easter Road. The first game was in December. It was actually just prior to Paul McStay's testimonial, the weekend before it. So in that match, all the players wore long sleeve versions of this strip. This is a short sleeve one. The second game was towards the end of the season in mid-April, and thanks to the wonders of modern technology, you can find video footage of the game on YouTube. And in that game, only 2 players wore short sleeve shirts. Unfortunately, neither of them were wearing number 14. You had Pierre Van Hooijdonk and his trademark number 9, and George Cadet came on as a substitute in that game, and he was wearing number 15. So I believe, going by the team sheets, number 14, the unused sub, was Stuart Gray that game. And it actually, during research for the shirt, and the previous season, the 94-95, where they wore this away strip without the sleeve patches on it, they actually found video footage of Stuart Gray coming on as a substitute with a long sleeve number 14 shirt on. To me, I would say it was never actually worn in a game. If this shirt with the sleeve patches was only worn in 2 games and short sleeves were only worn in 1 game, and the proposed substitute never actually played in that game, then I would say it's conclusive that it was never worn in a competitive match.
It's a good one for your collection, Paul, because I think when I was doing my research, this was quite a difficult one to get my hands on. Is it quite a rare jersey to get?
Both versions of it, whether it's with or without the sleeve patch, are quite rare. I've only known a couple of collectors to have it over the years, and I've only ever seen one version of the one we spoke about from Mike Galloway's benefit match as well. I've never seen one of them, so it's a key piece. It was one of the couple I've been missing from the 90s, the other one being the third shirt from this season, the white with the green and yellow flashes across it. The hunt still goes on for one of them to complete the collection.
Yeah, it'll come up. Invariably, there'll be people out there, Paul. I've seen a couple of pictures this week of that third jersey. It certainly would be a good one to add to your collection. But around about that time, and in actual fact, it was launched in 93, Celtic had a home jersey. It was controversial for a few different reasons. We wore it from 1993 right up to 1995, and even during that 2 years, there was a few changes. And the main changes were the numbering systems of the hoops, which in itself is a talking point, and one that I don't think the hoops will ever be the same again, Paul. After this particular jersey was after the first season, thereafter it appeared with numbers on it. So the numbering question for the Celtic green and white hoops, it goes way back. It goes right back to Robert Kelly. And in 1950, when every other club in Scotland had already implemented the numbering system on the jerseys, Kelly decided against it because he felt that the numbers would deface the Celtic jerseys. There was a compromise in May 1960 when the club numbered the shorts instead for a friendly match against Sparta Rotterdam. Finally, UEFA made it compulsory to have the numbers in 1975 during European competition, and Celtic continued domestically just to have the numbers on the shorts, something they were famous for, wasn't it? But that was all to change, and against Falkirk on the 13th of August 1994, Celtic ran out a very unusual change to their kit, but to this day I still liked it. Fergus McCann, being the man that he is, he took the instruction to get the numbers on the jerseys, but he decided not to put them on the back of the shirts, and that is the jersey we're just about to talk to you about. What is the story behind the shirt?
The story being, obviously, as you said, Mr. McCann decided to put the numbers on the sleeves. For that reason, he managed to get away with it for the first 3 games of that season before they forced him to put the numbers on the back of the shirts.
Again, it was one of these things, Paul. It was great that we finally had somebody. I mean, this is the thing. You go back to the old board, and we've done some really interesting podcasts on the takeover over the last few months. There's a couple more to come. And the problem that we really did have with the board was not only were they completely out of touch with modern football, they failed to drag the club into the modern era. They would have failed to provide us with the stadium we required with regards to the Taylor report on all-seater stadia. There was no way they were able to put that in place. But there were so many other aspects of that board's incompetence that came to light. And one of the big things, if you go back to Sir Robert Kelly, he was very much a man of principle who looked after the great name of Celtic Football Club. And there was various, I mean, the numbers might be deemed as quite a minor argument, but it's one that he fought and it's one that he continued with. And that's why Celtic didn't have numbers on their jerseys. Obviously, the other famous one was the flag issue, flying the tricolour at Celtic Park, and something he refused to take the flag down. When you look at McCann and the way that he stood up for the club's history, if you like, and the heritage of Celtic, it was part of that transitional period where he was getting your buy-in a lot of the time, Paul, because you thought to yourself, well, as far as I was aware, fans didn't want the numbers to go on the back of the jerseys. It was a break with tradition.
Yeah.
So McCann fought as much as he could. He fought the SFA, and they were ordered, as you've said there, at the beginning of 94-95, they were ordered to wear numbers. McCann, being the man that he is, has obviously looked at the wording of this order, and it's probably not stipulated that it had to be on the back of the jerseys, so he's put them on the sleeves.
Uh-huh.
And to be honest with you, it was reminiscent of the classic North American Soccer League jerseys of the 1960s and 70s, you know, where they used to have the numbers on their sleeves, and it looked pretty good. Some of them had the numbers on the front of the jersey across from the crest, and it did look good. Now, as you say, there were very, very few games that this jersey was worn in, Paul.
Only 3 games at the beginning of the season. First game away to Falkirk. Then the following week there was a League Cup game against Ayr United. And then the third game was the first home game, so we say, at Hampden against Dundee United. 3 games that the numbers were worn on the sleeves.
The Dundee United game, I remember it well because the winning goal was scored by Tony Mowbray in the dying minutes, wasn't it? It was celebrated like we had just won a cup. It was a 2-1 victory for Celtic. And you look at the Brockville game, I remember it well. It was 1 each, wasn't it? Andy Walker scored a header. And around about that time, Neely Mockin, who had famously been the kit man through probably every jersey we've spoken about on this podcast, other than the modern ones, but certainly the older ones. Neely Mockin had become ill at the time, and obviously Falkirk being his local kind of team, he wasn't able to do the kit man duty on that occasion. That was one of the first signs to the players that things weren't well with Neely. And Neely passed later on that month on the 28th of August. And obviously Celtic then had to wear numbers on the back of the jersey after that, you know. But certainly in Neely Mockin's time, he didn't have to suffer that other than the European games. But I did like the numbers on the sleeves. And it was the jersey that, it was very much an Umbro-centric jersey. It was quite clearly an Umbro jersey with the shading, the pattern and the green hoop. And I remember the games against Rangers around about that time. They had a very distinctive Adidas jersey because they had the 3 stripes on the sleeves, you know, which was similar to Marseille at the time. So talk to us then. There's only 3 games it might have been worn in. I can see there's a number on it. Tell us a wee bit more about the jersey itself and the specifics of the match it might have been worn in.
The specific jersey is a long sleeve version of this 93-95 kit, which in itself is rare because it was only ever available for players. It was never available for replicas. Yeah. And it was the number 11, the black number 11s with the white outline applied on each sleeve. To my knowledge, it was never worn in any game because the 3 games were played at the beginning of the season. Well, it was quite warm, and evidence shows that all the players wore short sleeve versions of this shirt. Right. So this has obviously been made up for an option to use. And number 11 at the time was John Collins, and you can clearly see him in games wearing the short sleeve version with the number 11s on the sleeve. And as I say, because it was only available for 3 games, the long sleeve versions of it were never actually worn. But just to find one at all of these shirts with the numbers on the sleeves is a huge bonus.
Absolutely. And I know from speaking to you, Paul, that it was a jersey that you had been hunting for some time, and you just recently got it, didn't you?
Yep.
The 4th jersey of today's podcast, Paul, is from that vintage season of 2012-13 where the club were celebrating their 125th anniversary. And, you know, we've got to say, whatever you think of the kits around about the Nike deal, they didn't do that badly this season, did they? And the third kit was no different. Talk us through the third jersey.
Yeah, and to my mind, this is not only the best Nike kit they produced for Celtic, it's one of the best kits we've had in the last 20 years easily.
Yeah.
As the white 125th anniversary shirt, plain white shirt, even a small white sponsor printed below the badge, and it was a one-off Celtic Cross badge produced for the 125th anniversary, with 1888 and 2013 appearing either side of the cross.
I like the fact that we were able to come to an agreement with the sponsor to make it almost like an invisible sponsor, Paul, because it's part of the beauty of the jersey is the fact that it's not plastered with tenants as it would have been at that time. Nike, the embroidered Nike swoosh is white.
Yeah, it's not even embroidered, it's a heat-pressed Nike swoosh.
Right.
That's on it. It's white as well, so it's almost invisible on the shirt.
It is. I totally agree with you. I know that the club were running polls to see what the most popular jerseys were throughout the ages, and you look at jerseys like that and think it was just so classy. I think of players like even Wanyama, I remember, and Samaras wearing this particular shirt. It's been modelled on "If you know the history." That was a tagline around about that time, and if you remember back, there was a really good video actually of Neil Lennon, walking past all the different various jerseys down the ages, and he walks into the boardroom. It was one of these promo videos that they put together, and he's looking through the old photographs on the table. You remember it? And then I think Billy Connolly's narrating it, and then he walks into the dressing room and he starts his team talk with "If you know the history." But all the modern players are all decked out in this kit, and they go out and they get the team group, and it's done in an old style out in the park. And obviously it's a nod to, although it's not an exact replica of, it is certainly a nod to the very first jersey, isn't it?
Yeah.
Big black collar. What I also liked about it was the socks, Paul. Very unusual socks, black and green hoops around the socks.
Yeah, I remember them, yeah.
The worst thing about it, if there is anything bad about it, was the fact that we didn't wear it that often.
Yeah, it's another case of one of our finest strips being very rarely used.
And again, when I was doing the book, sourcing the material for the book, Paul, I found this jersey really difficult to come by. Is it one of the more rare jerseys of modern times?
Yeah, even in the replica form, it's still very sought after. Again, because it was only worn in 2 or 3 games, to find a genuine match-worn version of it is very hard to come by.
Well, Paul, we've looked at 4 jerseys. The one that we've just discussed there would need to be my favourite of the 4, I've got to say, just as a personal aside. Were you able to identify, obviously from the back, you'll be able to tell us who wore the jersey and whether it was worn in a game? As
far as I'm aware, it's not a match-worn jersey. It's a full player issue shirt with I believe they call them laser cut holes for ventilation on the side of the shirt just below the armpit on either side. On the back it's printed with number 67 Wanyama across it, and it has the gold Clydesdale Bank sponsors sleeve patches on either sleeve. There was quite a lot of surplus stock of this strip left because it was very rarely used, and a lot of them were sold off even through the club superstore at the end of the season. It's possible that this could be one that was printed up, because from this period, the name set and the sleeve patches on the player shirts are identical to the one that your everyday fan would buy in a superstore.
Yeah.
So to be able to pick up a player issue shirt and then just have it printed in the superstore, it would look identical. I've no proof that this was ever worn in any game. So to my mind, it's just a player issue shirt. But it's a rare example of it and a fine addition to the collection as far as I'm concerned.
It certainly is. And where can we find this collection? Please remind us again, Paul, your excellent online collection. Where do we go to have a look at this?
Yeah, well, again, these shirts and all the others can be viewed at www.mycelticshirts.co.uk.
Paul, once again, it's been an absolute pleasure to look through 4 of your match-worn jerseys, and we'll do the same again next week. And until then, thanks again for being on A Celtic State of Mind.
No problem, Paul, thanks.
Celtic State of Mind has been named as one of 7 finalists in the Best International Podcast category at this year's Football Content Awards. We won the Best Football Podcast Award in 2018, and it is a real achievement to be finalists once again. Thank you all for your ongoing support over the last 3 years. If you have been enjoying our daily content, then feel free to vote for a Celtic State of Mind at footballcontentawards.com. I have added the link to the bio of this episode, and the instructions and further links are also on axom.net. You can also vote on Twitter by simply tweeting "I am voting for" at AxomPod in @the_FCAs for #BestPodcast. Thank you again for all your support.